We are pleased to be joined by the governor of the great state of Tennessee. It is Governor Bill Lee joining us on the Murphy Show hotline this afternoon. Governor, I hope you and your family had a wonderful, restful, and happy Easter, sir. Good afternoon.
How you doing, Matt? It was a blessed weekend for me. I was glad to be with my family. It was a great weekend. Thank you for asking.
Well, obviously, we think of you and we think of your wife, and it goes without question that our thoughts and prayers continue to go out to the family. And hopefully everything is going well in that regard. And obviously we're very curious your thoughts about some of the actions happening in the General Assembly. Some things have gotten to your desk. Others await approval by the Senate and the House of Representatives, not the least of which is a signature item that you've talked about quite a bit over the last several months, and that is the Education Scholarship Fund that we've much discussed here. Let me start here, Governor. What do you envision the final version of this looking like, and how do you describe it to people who are looking to try to figure out exactly what we're talking about with regard to the scholarship fund?
Yeah. You mentioned that, and I've been talking about this for several months. In my first State of the State address over 5 years ago, I said that Tennessee ought to have school choice, that every parent should have the option for their kid. And as you know, we passed education savings accounts that year, very limited, Shelby and Davidson County. We've expanded that to Hamilton. So we do have a limited form of this school choice. We were one of the first states to really pull that forward. So I've been talking about this for 5 years because I fundamentally believe this is a conservative issue of our time, and it has become very prevalent in the last year or two, in particular after COVID. So yes, we've been talking about it again now the last few months with education, with our Education Freedom Scholarship Act. What I hope for and what my vision is what I've had for 5 years, which is that parents should decide where their children go to school and what their children learn, not the government. And that people should have the ability to take their taxpayer dollars that they have, it's their dollars, they have put them into the state, and use them for the education of their child however they want to, either in a public school setting, which the vast majority of our kids will be, or in a private school, in a different school setting that they believe is best for their kid. That's what my vision is. That's what I hope happens. I think it's going to.
You know, anytime you come up with big ideas, you can expect that there's going to be some level of criticism, and criticism from both the political right and the political left in this regard. I'm curious if you've heard any of that, and particularly to the concerns of conservatives who truly believe that this in some way will allow the government to encroach on private education, that somewhere down the road it will give the government the ability to overly restrict private schools. Have you heard that? And if so, how do you answer some of that criticism?
Yeah, I say all the time, often, and have been saying for, 5 years now that I've been doing this, there's always going to be critics. There are lots of folks who just enjoy criticizing, right? But actually what I think this situation brings up most of all is a fear of the unknown and a fear of changing the status quo. People don't like change. We've had the same approach to education in this country for decades. We've had the same schools, the same approach, more money, more focus on, but structurally things have really not changed. There's been no challenge to the status quo in decades, and our outcomes have gone downhill for decades. I'm a business guy, and I'm in this job now, but I ran a company for 25 years, worked there for 35 years. You do not keep doing the same thing over and over in business. You know that you'll go broke eventually. So if you're not continuously improving and continuously changing and constantly challenging the status quo, most of these critics, they want to just keep doing the same thing. They want to put more money into the status quo system, and I just think that's a big mistake. And frankly, I think America's woken up to it. It's a bit of a revolution. you have state after state after state passing universal school choice initiatives. It's unfortunate to me that Tennessee hadn't done it yet because our kids are getting behind every month that we don't pass it. But I think the status quo has to be challenged.
You know, and that's the main concern that I hear, Governor, as I speak to Middle Tennessee from what I would describe as the right or conservative-minded people, that they're fearful of the unknown, as you say. And my response has always been, well, you know, the government does have some regulatory authority over private education. I don't think that adds anything to that, and it's up to us to make sure that doesn't happen down the road. From the left, their suggestion is that Governor Bill Lee just wants to kill public education. I mean, and as ridiculous as this sounds, some parents sadly believe that this is somehow an attack on public education. How do you respond to that?
Yeah, well, a couple things. Your point about the government, I'm a limited government guy. Like, less government's better. The goal here is to put more power in the hands of parents, not the government. When our children are all going to government-run schools, the power is in the government's hands with regard to where our children are educated, what they learn, and how they learn it. This is not about getting government into private education. This is about getting the power out of the hands of the government and getting it into the hands of parents. As far as public schools go, you know, this idea that you have to choose choice or public schools it's a false narrative. Like, you don't have to do that. You can be committed to having the best public school systems in the country and provide parents more choices at the same time. We can do both of those things. There's no reason why we can't do that. We put $2 billion into our public school system since I came into office, vastly more than has been put in previous years. We've got the largest teacher pay raise in state history. We revamped our funding formula for the first time in 30 years to make it modernized and suit school districts better. We have been consistently focused, and by the way, you've seen our most recent budget, which has hundreds of millions of dollars, once again, focused into what we call TISA, which is the funding formula for public schools. We can do both. And what happens is people that don't want to give parents the ability and the power will use the critique that this is to destroy public schools when, in fact, it's just the opposite.
Governor Bill Lee joining us on the Matt Murphy Show on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Final thought on the scholarship bill, and this is more of a political question. We've talked about the concept of the bill, your impetus behind promoting it. It is in both bodies, and I know that because I speak to the Senate and the House, two very different versions, and a fear that there might be an impasse. The House, it seems to be more of a part of a comprehensive education reform package. The Senate, more of a streamlined, let's just deal with the scholarship fund and we can deal with the rest at a later time. How confident are you that these two things are going to be married, and how involved are you, or are you willing to get in that process?
Well, number one, I'm confident that the Senate and the House both want to give expanded choice to parents. And because of that, I'm confident that they'll find a way forward, you know, kind of like they generally do on issues where the bills are a little different on the House side than the Senate side. That's not unusual. It happens all the time, and there's negotiation and there's willingness to come together and talk about that. That's exactly what's happening now. I have a really good relationship, as you know, with Speaker Sexton. I have a really good relationship with Lieutenant Governor McNally and with Leader Johnson and with Leader Lamberth, and we have meetings every week. We have multiple meetings every week around a lot of issues, around a lot of initiatives and bills that are important. This one in particular right now. So I'm confident. I understand the process. There is a process. There's a willingness. Members from the House and Senate are meeting together. I know that to be the case, and I feel confident this thing's going to work out.
Governor, shifting our attention to the issue of crime, we saw a tragedy on Easter Sunday yesterday here in Nashville. Sadly, a shooting happening at a local business, a brunch location yesterday afternoon, leading to the death of an individual. That person, the assailant, the suspect, is still on the run. I know that you are limited in what you can do from a local perspective as governor of the state, although I would note that there are some things you can do. We had Senator Brent Taylor on the show to talk about his bill that would establish some standardization across local communities with regard to traffic stops and the ability for police to do their jobs in those traffic stops. You have signed that bill, I believe, did so several days ago. What more can you do as governor to help protect particularly our metropolitan regions, Nashville, Memphis, and the like?
Yeah, there are things we can do, and I was at a law enforcement training academy graduation just last week, congratulating the 100 or so new cadets that are going to be police officers, sheriff's department, sheriff's deputies, and I mean, number one, we've got to keep supporting law enforcement. That's the number one thing. I'm a guy who goes to these graduations and speaks to these men and women because they need to know that we are behind them. We've given significant pay increases to the state police, the highway patrol that are under my jurisdiction or that under my authority, but we've increased their pay. We have created an environment of training that we believe is, when completed, our new training center will be the best one in the country. We've got to support law enforcement, number one, but we've also, we put $150 million in the last couple of cycles, and those are dollars that go to locals, to they're called Violent Crime Intervention Grant Funds. They go to the sheriff's department, to the local police departments, for them to use to battle locally their own crime issues. We've sent strike teams in and then permanently expanded the number of highway patrol in areas and places where we have particular crime issues. Shelby County, for example, we have significantly greater presence of Tennessee Highway Patrol in Shelby County than we've had in years. So there are things we can do, starting with supporting law enforcement and then supporting local agencies, and we're working hard to get that done.
From our perspective here, as we, I consider ourselves kind of the electronic community square, Governor, in the middle of Tennessee, and we take stories as they come to us and we discuss them as a community. This story involving Tyson Foods has gotten a lot of attention because it relates to what we see as the growing crisis under the Biden administration, the flood of illegal aliens coming here, truly an invasion, it seems. And the Tyson Foods story kind of relates to the business community looking the other way in many regards. I don't mean to call them out, only that the story was so prevalent recently with regard to illegal alien activity and the ability for businesses to continue to hire them. What more can the state do? I know that we are limited. I know the federal government tries to hamper the states. They've done it with Texas. They'll do it with Tennessee. But what more can you do as governor, and can our General Assembly do to protect the citizens of this state?
Yeah, I think the very first thing we can do is help reinforce the border. I mean, yes, there are things particular in Tennessee we want to do, but as you know, we have National Guard troops down there now. I just put, $5 million additional dollars for future deployments of National Guard to the Texas border or to whatever border we get asked to help support, because until you cut the flow of drugs, illegal, trafficking, and illegal immigrants, until you cut the flow of that across the border to our state, we're going to have more and more and more issues. It has become a catastrophic scenario on the border. Anybody that calls it political they're not being truthful. This is pragmatic. It's become a humanitarian crisis besides the crisis of criminals coming into our country and national security issues because of this border. President Biden has got to wake up to the fact that Americans broadly believe that what's happening at the border is a catastrophe for this country. So we've supported, we'll continue to support, we'll continue to work. And then, when you talk about crime and addressing crime in our state, well, we have more gang activity and more drug activity in our state in the last 3 years because of this open border and this going into small communities all over Tennessee. This border thing is changing the landscape of law enforcement from one end of the state to the other in Tennessee. So yes, we've got to consider these companies and decisions about who's working, but I think the broader issue is what's happening at the border and how we can stop it. And I hope, by the way, that we stop it come November in this next election.
Are you in favor of, I know that there are some that are suggesting in the Senate, for example, Senate Bill 2158 would require agencies and law enforcement departments to collect data on illegal immigration in the state. Are some of these efforts that I'm sure you're familiar with? I know they pulled a bill that would strengthen the illegality of transportation of illegal aliens in the state of Tennessee because there was not some exact language there. But generally speaking, you're in favor of doing what we can legally do to strengthen the laws, including E-Verify?
I mean, you bring up a couple bills that I don't know the details of. If a bill hadn't come to my desk, then I don't know. But yes.
No, I get it.
The answer, so the broad answer is, I think what you're asking is, am I in favor of strengthening our ability to know and understand when there are illegal immigrants in our communities and how they're getting there and what they're doing? Yes, I do think we should. And then certainly when someone has been stopped for an alleged crime it's determined that person potentially has committed a crime and is an undocumented person in this country, yes, we should make sure that we know where they are and what they're doing.
Two more quick questions. I know we're running rapidly out of time here, Governor, and I so appreciate you being with the listeners of Super Talk 99.7 WTN and my show. But one question involving the franchise tax and the idea that I think, if I'm reading this correctly, that based on a number of circumstances that have kind of come to fruition this session, that Tennesseans are about to get what is amounting to a tax relief. Is that right?
Well, if this legislation is passed, which it should be, because we have developed the right strategy for the circumstance that was presented to us. And I could go into that at length, but I'm telling you, this is the right way forward to our state, for our state. I have an obligation as governor to make sure that we mitigate risks to the taxpayers of this state, that we make sure that our fiscal policy is sound and that we don't take risk. And that's what this piece of legislation, as I've proposed it, will do. And it will create a reduction in franchise taxes for businesses all across the state. It will, in fact, make our state more competitive from a franchise tax standpoint than it has been before, and it's the right thing to do at the same time.
And finally, we just, as you well know, Governor, several days ago commemorated the anniversary of Covenant School. And there are still so many questions about the motivations of the individual involved in that. We've not yet seen a full release of some of that information. As best you can you tell us where you are on the public's right to know on that issue? And there are some on the left, particularly, that have suggested that we've not done what we can as a state to, A, protect the rights of the citizens of the state of Tennessee, but also to do everything that is possible to protect our children. I wanted you an opportunity to speak on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's still heartbreaking, isn't it? It is. Just thinking about, and I met with, just in the last couple of weeks, with the mother of one of the children, and certainly we're personal friends with one of the teachers, of the substitute teacher that was killed. So it has all been very brought back to us, and it's a painful and difficult situation. I believe that there should be greater clarity around what happened. And that's, what that looks like, I don't know, but there ought to be greater clarity. And the challenge, of course, is that we do have separate branches of government. It is in the courts. There is a limit as to what can be called for while it sits in a court, and I understand those limits. So, but and it's up to the courts to decide, and we wait on their decision. But I believe that there ought to be more clarity about the whole situation especially this far out.
Governor, thank you for your time. I overextended my welcome by about 4 minutes. You were very gracious to allow me to do so, but we'll have you on anytime. I know yours is very valuable, and we appreciate you spending a little bit of it with us.
You're a good man, Matt. Thank you, sir. Be on anytime.
All right, take care. There's Governor Bill Lee joining us for a good 20 minutes or so.